Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. William James did not invent this proverb, but he gave it a scientific foundation that no one before him had managed to provide. Character, he insisted, is not something you are born with. It is something you build, one action at a time, often without realizing it. This idea sits at the heart of James's Principles of Psychology, published in 1890, a book that transformed how Western thought understood the human mind. James was writing at a moment when psychology was just emerging as a discipline distinct from philosophy, and he was determined to ground it in biology, in the actual workings of the nervous system. What he found was this: the brain is not fixed. It is plastic. It changes in response to what we do. And that plasticity is the very mechanism through which character is formed. Think about what this means. Every time you act in a certain way, you make it slightly easier to act that way again. The neural pathways that support that behavior are reinforced, deepened, made more automatic. Conversely, every time you resist an impulse, every time you choose effort over ease, you are building something, not just a momentary victory, but a structural change in the organism that is you. James called this the law of habit, and he saw it operating everywhere in human life. But here is the part that most people miss when they read James on character. Intention alone does nothing. You can want to be generous, courageous, disciplined, patient. You can hold those ideals in your mind with great sincerity, and still fail to develop any of those qualities if your actions do not follow. Character is not formed by wanting. It is formed by doing. This is not a moral judgment. It is a psychological observation. The nervous system does not respond to aspiration. It responds to behavior. In talks to teachers, James made this practical. He was speaking to educators, but the message applies to anyone who wants to change. He urged people to begin acting on their ideals immediately, without delay. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, now. Every postponement, he warned, is not merely a lost opportunity. It is an active reinforcement of the tendency to postpone. You are not standing still when you fail to act. You are moving backward. There is something almost harsh in this view of human nature, and James knew it. He wrote with characteristic frankness about the way character hardens over time. By the age of 30, he suggested, character is set like plaster in most people. The habits of thought, the emotional responses, the patterns of action, they become increasingly rigid, increasingly resistant to change. This is not fatalism. James was too committed to free will for that. But it is a warning. The window for easy transformation is open in youth, and it narrows with time. This is why James believed so deeply in the importance of early education. Not education in the narrow academic sense, but education in the broader sense, the shaping of habits of attention, effort, and response. A child who learns to persist through difficulty is not just learning a skill. They are forming a character trait that will ripple through every domain of their life. A child who is consistently allowed to avoid effort is also forming a character, one that will make future effort feel unbearable. The modern relevance of this is striking. We live in a culture saturated with self-help language, with talk of mindset, visualization, affirmations, and intention setting. James would have been skeptical of all of it, not because inner life does not matter, but because none of it substitutes for the thing that actually forms character: repeated action. The person who meditates on courage but never does anything courageous is not becoming courageous. The person who reads about discipline but never submits to it is not becoming disciplined. What James offers instead is both more demanding and more hopeful than the self-help industry's promises. More demanding, because it requires actual behavior change, not just mental rehearsal. More hopeful, because it means that character is always, at every stage of life, at least partially within our control. Even the person whose character has calcified has not entirely lost the power to act differently, and every different action, however small, is a vote cast for a different self. James also understood something that modern psychology has confirmed. Willpower is not the primary mechanism of character change. We cannot rely on conscious effort to carry us through every moment of temptation or difficulty. The real goal is to make good behavior automatic, to practice it until it requires no special effort, until it simply is what we do. That is when character has truly formed, when virtue no longer needs to be chosen, because it has become habit. The deepest insight James offers on character is this: we are always in the process of becoming. There is no moment when the work is finished, no point at which the self is finally complete. Every day we are either strengthening the habits that serve us or the ones that diminish us. There is no neutral ground. The question is not whether we are forming character, but what kind of character we are forming, and whether we are paying attention to the process. Subscribe to The Psychology of William James to explore more of his timeless ideas.